Pam, if you could, give us the invocation.
Okay. If you'll bow your hands, Lord, we would like to come before you today and thank you for everything that you have done for us, helping the people in the flood, the national disasters, our armed forces. We just really would like to thank you for your attention and your blessings on us. Be with us here today and help us in our deliberations that we might make good decisions. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. All right, we'll just follow the agenda here we have, and number one is the annual audit. So we'll turn it over to
Yes,
our
sir.
audit team.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to David DeCleva with Smith Sapp. He performed our audit this year. I just wanted to give him a big thank you. This was not an easy one this year as we faced the hurricane and flooding as soon as we tried to get started with this audit, so they were great to work with us. And of course, as always, I just want to thank my staff. They worked hard this year trying to get everything prepared and everything ready as well. So I'm going to turn it over to David and let him get started on the audit for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to report to you today that we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That report begins on page 1 of the presentation. An unmodified opinion is also known as a clean opinion. This means that the amounts and the disclosures contained in the statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The authority's statement of net position is on page 7 of the presentation. I'd like to go ahead and just review a few highlights with you. You'll see that at year end, the authority had $85,405,000 of total assets. This was a 6% increase from the previous year. You'll see that the largest increases were in the cash and investment and in the capital asset classifications. The total of cash and investments at year end were $35,928,000. I would like to point out that the board has designated $31 million of this total for specific purposes. I will point out to you in a few minutes a note that discloses what those purposes are. Total capital assets at year end were $46,511,000. This was about a $2.8 million increase. This large increase was primarily due to the landfill gas expansion project that was completed during the year. The authority's total liabilities at year end were $32,477,000. This was a 9% increase. This increase is primarily due to an increase in the closure and post-closure care cost liabilities. This is for capacity that was utilized during the year at the landfill. As the landfill is utilized, those costs are recognized over that time period. You'll see total net position at year end, which is the difference between total assets and total liabilities, amounted to $53,791,000. And of this amount, $46,511,000 reflects the authority's investment in its capital assets. Over on page 9 of the presentation, you'll see the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Here you'll see total operating revenues for the year were $26,150,000. This was a 3% increase. Tipping fees increased to $1,085,000, and this was due to the rate increase that took effect July 1, 2017. You'll see that the sale of recyclable materials decreased about $652,000, and this was due to a decline in cardboard and newspaper prices during the year. Total operating expenses were $25,745,000. This was a 5% increase. The largest increases were in the professional and contractual, maintenance and repairs, and landfill closure cost expense classifications. Overall, you'll see that the authority's operations for the year resulted in an increase in net position of $1,980,000. The last item I'd like to bring to your attention on this statement is the cumulative effect adjustment that was made to beginning net position. Right down at the bottom of the page, you'll see the adjustment was $19,612. This adjustment was required by Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 75 that was required to be implemented during the year. The statement made changes to how the actuary actually did their calculations for the post-employment health care benefit plan. It also made some changes to the required disclosures. Overall, the monetary effect of the required change was minimal. The cumulative effect of that change was only the $19,000 amount. The notes to the statements begin on page 12. I'd like to point out just a couple of notes to you. Note number 1, which begins on page 12, is a summary of all of the authority's significant accounting policies. This note provides information on how various transactions are accounted for in the financial statements. Over on page 15, you'll see note 2. This note discloses information about the authority's cash and investments at year end. Over on note 3, you'll see the designated cash disclosure, what I referenced earlier. You'll see amounts have been designated by the board for closure and post-closure, equipment replacement, future construction, MRF contingency, OPEB, which is the post-employment health care plan, and waste diversion. That's the $31 million I'd referenced earlier. On page 17, you'll see note 5. This note provides information about the authority's capital assets and changes in those capital assets during the year. Note 7 provides detailed information about the authority's closure and post-closure care liabilities. Note 8 on begins on page 19. It's a pretty long note. This note discloses information about the authority's pension plan, its proportionate share of the state plan, and various actuarial information as well. The last note I'd like to point out is note 9. That starts back on page 23. It relates to the post-employment health care plan benefit. And this note provides the revised information that was required in conjunction with GASB Statement 75 implementation. They really expanded on the note disclosure, and you'll see that it goes on for 3 or 4 pages. So, the last item I'd like to review with you is our report on compliance and internal controls that we issued in accordance with government auditing standards. That was actually starts the last pages of the presentation way back on page 49. This report states that our audit disclosed no instances of noncompliance and no material weaknesses in the authority's internal control structure. I'm also pleased to report that our audit did not disclose any other findings that warranted the issuance of a management letter this year. And I'd just like to conclude by stating it was a pleasure working with the authority staff in completing our audit engagement, and we did get it done despite the storm. The storm actually rolled in during the week that we were scheduled to be out here, but Jan was very helpful in getting us the information. We actually worked on some of it outside of our normal time frame just to get it completed in time. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have about the audit or the financial statements themselves.
Thank you. Any questions?
From what I understand, everything is in compliance, it's done correctly, you found no problems.
Yes, ma'am.
They're perfect.
Oh,
The
Is
financial
that what you're
statements are
saying?
materially correct and perfect and stated. I can't make an opinion on whether or not they're perfect.
my mom says I'm perfect, just saying.
Okay, just, one thing, and I don't know if that would be Jan or you, either one, but back on page 16, because that's one thing that I always like to look at, and that is, the monies that are in the landfill closure cost and the post-closure care costs, those as well as where the insurance that has been so discussed, not only in ours, but in other state and councils, we are up to date on where we should be in our funding. In other words, we've taken the part from these tipping fees, they're where they should be, and we're at the correct amount that we've been asked to be.
Yes, ma'am. In reference to the closure and post-closure and future landfill construction, we are currently putting aside $8.25 for every ton of material brought into the landfill. That's per our engineer's request, and yes, ma'am, we are up to date. And as well as the OPEB, yes, ma'am, we are up to date on that as well.
Well, that, in case everybody is not aware of that, I think we're the only ones that are. And I think that is a great thing. As I've said before, if we have any obligations, we need to collect the money as we're going, and we need to put it in those accounts, and it needs to be left in those accounts. So I'm glad to hear that we're there. Thank you.
Do those accounts take into consideration inflation and stuff over time?
Yes, sir, they do. When Mr. Moore gives us an update every time, that's exactly what he's looking at, future dollar costs.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's amazing when you hear from our CPA firm that does our audit and says we're doing it right, we're up to speed, and somehow that differs from the blogger's opinion and the public opinion on where we stand. So I think I'll put my faith in the staff in the CPA firm.
Well, I was reading some stuff too about the bloggers and this and that this week, and it's always amazing to me. They know so much about our information, but they never hear. I mean, we've got one lady that here has joined us several times, and we always have open communication, but yet they seem to know more than we do, and they don't even show up. So I don't know where they're getting their information from.
Thank you. I think you've done a great job. I think staff has, and we really do appreciate that.
Yes, Jan and everyone else, your staff that helped on this. Good job. You can probably come give me some pointers.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you again, David.
Yeah. Anything else on the annual audit?
No, sir.
Do we need to?
I do need you to vote on sending that to the board. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we move this audit on with approval to the full board. To second it, yes.
I second that motion. All in favor say
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The recycling grant, I'm going to let Esther discuss with you.
Good afternoon. As I indicated at our last board meeting, we did receive a grant application in from the city of North Myrtle Beach. They're looking at purchasing 5 additional recycling igloos to place throughout the city that will be primarily used for residential recycling. However, they do offer recycling to commercial businesses as well. They currently have 94 recycling bins, recycling igloos in their system, so this will just be in addition to what they currently have. The total cost for the 5 igloos, as indicated in the packet, is $21,924. So they're requesting $10,000, and they will supplement the rest of the funding to purchase the 5. So we just need, staff recommends that this be sent to the full board for their consideration.
Can I get a motion?
Can we discuss it for just a second, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Kind of new to this.
I like to discuss a lot.
I've learned that with you.
Is that this isn't different from anything they're doing. In other words, they're applying for this grant, but it really isn't anything different. They're not going to be starting any other recycling things. They're just adding that to what they have.
That's exactly right. They're just adding 5 additional igloos to just offer that much more opportunity to recycle. So in their mindset, or in what they wrote in their application, with the greater visibility and the more recycling opportunities out there, they are looking that their recycling will increase.
Okay,
It's similar to what Surfside Beach did in purchasing additional roll carts.
okay, right, okay. I'm happy that they're willing to spend the other $11,924. That is definitely more money than they're spending, I will say. And I'm all for any additional recycling, so I think this is a good thing. I would have liked to have seen with the money that we put there, that we would see something that some of these people are doing different, or doing in different, really different locations to really train or show people that we would see some differences there. Having said that, I support recycling and support them putting new ones there, and I really appreciate them willing to more than double the money that we have there, so I'm in support of this. But in the future, and maybe we need to be more specific when we redo this grant, I would really like to see something that is done different than what they have been doing, and that will carry on in the future to really give us a whole lot more. Out of the 38% that goes into that landfill that we can recycle, I would like to see some of these things address that, but I think that's our fault for not
Well,
being
in
more
the
specific in the grant.
Yeah, the application basically says to show a means of increasing recycling. It wasn't specific in saying how you're going to do it, to definitely pigeon or give specific direction on these are the things that you need to use it for. It just said show an increase in recycling.
Like I said, I think that's our negligence in putting that together. Maybe we can look at that for next year when we set this grant together. I would just like to see some of these cities or organizations start, like a food, to take the food out of it, like we did with the schools. Because once you get that wet waste out, then everything else they have we can recycle. So I guess I'll say it's our fault, but I'd like to see a little bit more bang for the buck there.
Well, I think one point, we all know multifamily recycling is just about impossible. And they are doing multifamily. These will go to their multifamily system that they're already utilizing. So the multifamily is a big nut to crack. So they're pushing on that side of it. But we'll take a look at the rewrite of the grant and maybe put a underline under new concepts of innovative ideas or something like that. And I would have thought we would have got some kind of request from Publix or some of those stores that are already doing it to increase what they're doing. But
I really am thrilled that both of these cities, and I think both of them have had conversations with us in the past about recycling, and I know Conway's having a terrible time right now with the flood. I know they're interested in doing that. I am disappointed that we haven't seen some of the other organizations that have really worked diligently for doing away with the straws and doing different things. I'm really disappointed that some of those organizations have not applied for some of this grant money to continue the work they've done or to start, different things like that. I was hoping to see that. Have we had anyone from any other organizations or places applying for that monies for that?
we've had one group in Loris that's interested in getting into yard waste, recycling, maybe food, recycle, compost and stuff like that. They've been out a couple of times, but we haven't received any requests yet. And I think we definitely gonna have to discuss collection, food collection in next year's budget. I think that's the key, and we've left that up to the private side, thinking that they would step up, and I think it's kind of falling back a little bit in Charleston also, but that'll be a discussion item in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a picture of these igloos or anything like that?
I left it on my desk.
Do we, or
I'll bring you up one.
if we give the grant to the Igloos, is our logo or anything gonna be on it kind of?
No, sir, we did not
Let
require,
people know?
we did not require, in this application process that anyone tag anything that they did with our logo. Now, if that's something we're interested in doing, we can look at it again next year.
I think that's a great
Even if it just said donated by or something, I don't know. Just
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what DHEC
That
does.
way,
Anything,
more people can see
Mhm.
what we do.
Yeah, and we can try to figure out something, we don't want to get it too confused with who they need to call when they
it's
have an
not
issue.
picked up.
Yeah, but, like roll carts, for instance, or even, I mean, let's see, back in 2008, when we first opened the MRF, and we said we don't want to do blue bags anymore, we want to use the recycling bins. Each municipality that was participating in the blue bag system were given an allotment of bins, 18-gallon recycling bins. And it was purposeful on our end not to put any of our information on it, even though we purchased the bins. And that was solely because we didn't want that confusion on the resident side or the whoever was using it side to know who to call. But DHEC does, not on equipment, but on advertising and things of that nature. When we do grants through DHEC, they do require that their logo is on any public education that we do. They don't require it on their equipment, but they do on the public education, just to show that it was paid for in part by them. So we can definitely look at that.
I think that's a good idea. We donated by the Solid Waste Authority. Please call North Myrtle Beach City. Here's their number.
We get so many calls now when, Waste Management, Waste Industries, or GG&G doesn't pick up again, they call us. Why their trash wasn't picked up, and then we have to go through the process of, whose name's on the bin. If it's Waste Management, this is the number that you call. We don't do those collections, but
I have found through the storm that everything the cities are doing and everything private industries are doing, they connect it back to us, and we're at fault for that. And that, I don't know what you do about that, except we just live with it and do the best you can, because most people associate the pickup with us. And if they put that in there and Google comes up in a waste thing, here we come up, and they think we're raising their age. They think we're doing it all like that. So that is difficult.
We will need a recommendation from the committee to send this to the full board.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Anything else up for discussion?
Just one question. Did anybody ever contact the fire chief about what Mr. Prince said about he would like for the fire departments to start applying for this grant and start recycling?
I haven't talked to Steve about it, but some of the comments in that meeting was actually one of the council committee members said, well, we need to contact the chief. I think coming from the chief would be better than, but I will touch base with Steve and see if he or Chris made a contact about more recycling in-house.
Okay, thank you.
So how many more grants do we have available?
Well, there was 150,000 in the budget, and we've so far approved one definitely, and then this will be the second one going to the board, so that'll be 20,000.
Yeah, I thought it was two. Okay, that's it? Take a recommendation to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Adjourn.
Thank you.
Guys, gals, and generation.